You know, we're all performing, pretty much all the time, whether it's for a huge audience online or, let's be honest, just for our phone's front-facing camera. But what does it even mean to be authentic when it feels like we're always being watched? Today, let's get into it. The modern performance of self.
So let's start way back with the ancient Greek myth of Narcissus. The story goes, he was this hunter who was so incredibly beautiful that when he saw his own reflection in a pool of water, he just fell in love with it, completely captivated. He was so obsessed with his own image that he wouldn't eat or drink or sleep. He just stared and stared until he literally wasted away. It's really the ultimate cautionary tale about what can happen when our own reflection becomes our entire world. And that, of course, brings us right here to the modern world. Because think about it, for celebrities, influencers, YouTubers, heck, for pretty much anyone who lives any part of their life online, staring at your own reflection, both literally and figuratively, is kind of part of the job description. So what happens when that curse of Narcissus becomes a full-blown career path?
To figure that out, let's start at the most visible, most extreme end of the spectrum. Section 1, the spectacle of performance. Okay, so right away, we have to draw a line between two very different things. On one side, you've got genuine emotion. That's all about vulnerability, about trying to create a real connection with someone. But on the other side, you have performative emotion. And that's about vanity, about seeking attention. One source we looked at points to the recent press tour for the movie Wicked as a perfect example of this, calling it a display of insane performative emotion and undeserved self-importance. It's where every tear feels like it's been perfectly calculated for the camera. It's a performance that's trying to convince us of this deep emotion that, well, might not actually be there.
This kind of huge public spectacle feels so modern, right? It feels like something from our era. But was performance always this loud? Was it always this much of a public display? Let's peel back a layer. And that question brings us to something much more intimate, a different kind of expression. Welcome to Section 2, the soul in the machine. We're going to shift gears from the big spectacle to the deeply personal act of connection. Before Spotify playlists, before algorithms, there was the mixtape. And as this quote gets at, a mixtape was so much more than just a bunch of songs. It was an incredibly intimate performance. Think about it. You were carefully curating a little piece of yourself, your coolness, your vulnerability, your secret favorites, and then just handing it to someone. It was this risky act of connection, a way of saying, hey, this is me, without having to say a single word.
And this idea of performance coming from a truly real place, it's captured perfectly by the soul singer Leaf Fields. He says that to write a song, he has to mentally travel back to his own life, his own experiences, to find his soulful geographical location. His art isn't about putting on a show. It's an authentic expression that's totally rooted in his reality.
The legendary jazz bassist Buster Williams adds another really crucial piece to this puzzle. He believes that the whole basis of his music is just humanity, and that a musician's most important job, above all else, is to have a sympathetic heart. So it seems like, in its purest form, performance isn't about self-obsession at all. It's actually about empathy and connection. But okay, what happens when these soulful, intimate performances are suddenly thrown under the harsh glare of public scrutiny?
Well, that brings us to Section 3, when the world watches.
If you look at history, it shows us that society has always been a little bit nervous about raw, authentic expression. I mean, there's a long history of trying to control it. Billie Holiday's incredibly powerful protest song, Strange Fruit, banned from the radio. The Doors got kicked off live television for singing a single word. In the 80s, you had politicians holding Senate hearings just to put warning labels on music. And by the 90s, a judge literally declared an album by Two Live Crew to be obscene. There's a very clear pattern here of trying to regulate what artists can say and, how they can say.
And that forces us to ask a really tough question. When it comes to performance and expression, who actually gets to draw the line? And what happens to the artist who dares to cross it? All these external pressures, they force a reaction, right? And that leads us right into Section 4, the mask we wear. This is about how the performer, and really all of us, starts to fracture, creating a public persona just to navigate the world.
So here's a fascinating, very modern example of this kind of mask. One source we looked at identifies a new archetype it calls the performative male. This is a persona that's been shaped by our current cultural moment. It's described as being adaptable, office-friendly, and very consciously non-threatening. It's basically a performance designed for survival in a social world that has grown kind of wary of traditional masculinity. But sometimes, that pressure of being watched can actually be turned inward to create some really powerful art.
Billie Eilish said one of her songs was incredibly hard to write precisely because the performance required her to confront her own internal struggles. So for her, the art isn't a mask to hide behind, it's actually more like a mirror, reflecting her inner reality to the world.
And if you want to see an extreme version of this kind of fracture, you don't have to look any further than the fictional character Miss Meadows. Publicly, she's this perfectly polite, prim and proper schoolteacher, but her private reality, she's a ruthless vigilante who takes justice into her own hands. It is a total performance, where the public mask has absolutely zero connection to the private person underneath.
Okay, so let's try and pull all these different threads together. In a world of constant performance, how do we find what's actually real? Our final section is about exactly that, finding the real note. I absolutely love this quote from the great Gil Scott-Heron. What he's arguing here is that even refusing to perform, saying you're not interested in the world around you, is its own kind of performance. It is a political statement. In other words, we are always communicating something about who we are, whether we mean to or not. There's really no escaping it.
So if we can't escape performance, what is it that makes it feel authentic? Well, looking back at our examples, a pretty clear pattern starts to emerge. It seems like true performance is rooted in lived experience, like Leaf Fields. It's an intimate act of connection, like that mixtape. It has the courage to speak truth to power, like Billie Holiday did. It reflects an internal reality, just like with Billie Eilish. And maybe most important of all, it has a sympathetic heart, just as Buster Williams told us. At the end of the day, it's about humanity.
And that brings the camera right back around to us. Narcissus was cursed because he could only see himself. But we live in a world of curated feeds and public profiles where we're constantly performing for other people. So I guess the final question is, in this digital hall of mirrors, what performance are you giving? And is it one that you still recognize as your own? Thanks for tuning in.